Okay.
All right, we've been clear to go.
All right, thank you. Earlier this week, Monday and Tuesday, we had some meetings on the South Holston and Watauga rivers to discuss issues that might be of interest up there. The meetings were organized by Bart Carter. The objective of the meetings was to capture all issues that might be going on these rivers. They were public meetings. They were held locally, and they were attended well by TWRA staff. Commissioners McMillan and Stout were there. TVA sent some people from their river operations and land management units, and there were plenty of anglers, raft outfitters, and fishing guides. The raft outfitters were primarily at the Watauga meeting. Each meeting had about 35 people that were non-agency affiliated, and Bart basically presented our fisheries management activities, what we do about access, docking regulations, and such. And TVA presented how they run the water through these systems. And at the end of the more formal presentations, we invited the public to just give us all their comments, any issues they would have, and we heard comments till no one had anything else to say. I'm just going to give an overview of what the public comments were. I'm not really here to prioritize them or judge them in any way. It's just what they were. Some of them are more obvious issues than others. The very first thing at the South Holston, we had someone interested in guide licenses and regulations for people that do commercial activity on the river, and they really didn't clearly state what problem this would solve, but they went out of their way to imply that they wanted additional enforcement if they paid any additional fees. So I had a sense that enforcement was something they thought would solve a problem which they didn't mention. They did request a clearer interpretation of wading rights on the river. They'd like us to improve signage, especially on the closed zones. We have a couple closed spawning areas on that river. They want us to develop the Big Springs property to improve their options. The Big Springs is also known as the Morton Track. It was purchased a few years ago, and they'd like to be able to get their boats in and out there a little better. So that's something we'd probably be able to do down the road. They also mentioned that jet boats and jet skis can be problems at times. Can be dangerous, eroding banks. And unlike the Caney Fork meeting we had where people were saying there's too many paddlers, we had at least two different people say there's not hardly anybody paddling the river now. And they were blaming jet skis and such for that. Towards the end of the meeting, this group of pretty well vested stakeholders, there were obviously a higher percentage of guides in this group than there would be in a normal population that fishes this river. They asked us to really consider fly fishing in wading and non-motorized boats, these drift boats, as a priority use for the river and any planning efforts we would have. A few more comments. They asked TVA to provide them predictable flows. Of course, TVA juggles a lot of commitments when they run water down the river, but I think they were very interested in what the public had to say about getting at least 4-hour blocks so that people can schedule float trips on the river more predictably. They requested, we mentioned some of our economic data, and they felt that it's 10 years old now. It's probably time for us to revisit that, and we hope to do that. They were interested in more amenities at the ramps, particularly the TVA ramps. And in general, we talked about there's no crisis, there's no fisheries crisis on either one of these rivers really. They're both very productive trout waters, but we are interested in hitting certain targets, and we talked a little bit about fishing regulations, and this crowd was pretty open to our management process, which is to monitor it for a few more years and then make recommendations at that time. But they seem pretty open to our suggestions regarding regulations and stocking. They'd asked us to stock more locations along the river. They gave us a little discussion about how they disliked the the fact that it's legal to use trout as bait. And lastly, they were concerned about otters being in South Holston. These last three issues about how many fish are going in and whether or not fish are coming out as bait and if otters are eating a few are really not a big deal on the South Holston. The fish are extremely abundant. So we don't have any biological data to support any of these concerns, but it was concerns that the public had all the same. So the region is still compiling the stenographer's notes on these meetings, but there were some obvious things that I talked to Bart that are probably going to be on the short to-do list. We'd like to continue development of that new property at Big Spring to get an actual ramp in there. Right now there's a dirt ramp that's pretty difficult to negotiate. Bard has it lined up with the either the county or state, whoever runs that Hickory Tree Bridge, to put up a sign actually on the bridge so that when you go down the river you can see the sign saying you're entering the closed zone, protect the spawning fish. They're in the region, they're going to evaluate if there's a need for a horsepower restriction or no wake zone. And the fisheries team is going to continue monitoring trout populations, and they will bring any suggested regulation changes in 2014 to meet our goal of having, right now it's a very abundant, there's high numbers of trout. There's plenty of big fish, there's way too many little fish probably, and we're trying to get trying to meet our targets of having a lot of fish in that slot limit of 16 to 21 inches. That's our goal. It's not a numbers question, it's a size issue there. And lastly, we are redesigning our creel survey plans in a couple of regions of the state to include more work on these tailwaters. So we're going to be estimating angler activity and economic value of these waters, and this one will probably be evaluated in 2014. And the crowd was happy to hear that. On to the Watauga River.
Frank, can we just discuss South Holston River before we get on to Watauga?
Absolutely.
Because they're so different? Obviously, I fish South Holston. There is no rafting on South Holston. I'm not, as far as just commercial rafting, or occasionally you'll see private kayaks, just a family just coming down, and that's about it. I do want to point out, because Commissioner Stout and I were at the meetings, it was unanimous with the outfitters that were there and the guides there that they would like to see a guide's license. And it was interesting to me that the guys from North Carolina, their comment was they drive from Asheville about 200 days a year at $4.50 a pop. And so, I mean, and they're the ones that were saying we need trash cans. They're the ones I thought was interesting there. So, well, we need bathrooms, we need trash cans. They're making a living off this river, and they're asking us to do things to improve it, and yet they don't even have to buy a license to guide on it. So I know I'm surprising y'all with my opinion about this, but I noticed in your public comments that there was no on your comments from the agency that still didn't feel like we need to address that, and I'm just.
Oh, well, that's true. That was on our next steps. Good catch there. That wasn't.
Don't try to
really
slide me, okay?
Well, like I said, that was. We still have our notes, and that's not a finite list of things we're going to do. But there were some of the obvious things that when Bart and I were leaving the door there and talking on the phone on the way home, we said we can do these things. We should do these things, and that. The 40-minute debate over guide licenses that we had at South Holston really didn't add any new information to what we knew. Trout fishermen love this. They want to do it, or the trout guides love it, and they want us to do a lot of stuff for them once we start asking for their money. I mean, they want a service associated with that, and that's right.
I think they're getting the service now. I'm not sure what we can, other than put a trash can down at the boat ramps. I'm not sure that we can do any more service for them, but I do think that they've been getting a free ride for quite a while. And, like I say, there's even one of the guides even commented, I mean, you cut hair in the state of Tennessee, you got to have a license. I mean, I guess I understand where the agency's coming from are we going to implement a fee and really it's not cost worthy because the effort that that we put into it, we're really not getting anything out of it. I mean, is that where we're coming from?
Well, one of the points I'm coming from on the same way is there's not a whole lot of money to be gotten from such a small group of people when our issues may be much broader.
I guess that it's almost like the principle of things for the average fisherman there when he's competing with commercial people that are making a living, and they're having to get out of their way when they're maybe wade fishing, and that's the comment I get. You know, these guys are in here, and it's not going to decrease the number of people to fish. I think it just maybe have a better attitude of the Tennessee license holders that while they're fishing, that they at least know that these people are helping pay for maybe a little more law enforcement, that sort of thing. So I don't know. You know, I know yes, sir.
Does Arkansas have a guy's license for their trout fishing?
They do. I think it's like $100, isn't it, what they were told?
It's not, it's like $20 for the residents. Non-residents, about $100.
Okay.
I have another question. What do you anticipate they would want more than what they're getting?
Well, what they said they wanted was more enforcement specifically, and they said they would want, you know, better amenities at some of the access areas like trash cans. But some of the things that they want aren't really good management strategies for access areas, like trash cans aren't necessarily a good thing because of other issues that happen. So, like I said, we haven't vetted all their comments through the whole agency process. It's just reporting what they wanted. And I stood up at the meeting and said, what would you do what issue do we correct if we got your money through any mechanism? And
well, I think that's
I
where
never
we're
got an
missing
answer.
well, but I think that's where we're having
yeah.
I guess we're not seeing eye to eye with that, Frank,
Yeah.
is that there's really not a particular problem. It is the principle of the average fisherman that's saying you have to pay to play. And there's not a problem. It's not saying that we want to improve this or that. Obviously, that would be great, but it's just the principle of the matter that the individual's making an income and making a living. A daily tip would take care of a license fee for a year. It's very insignificant. So the fact that it's going to, and again, like Commissioner McMillan said, all the fishermen or all the guides were well in favor of this. I think Jeff's got an ally here, so I know you probably don't like that.
I agree that the trout guides want that.
And again, I don't think, again, you keep saying, well, what's the problem, or what problem is that going to solve? I don't think it's going to solve any problem, but to me, it's a principle matter. And that's where
And that view is shared by the people that stood up at the meeting too. It's just on principle, and we're coming at it from a management and biology and resource side. It's going.
Let me throw
pick
out.
a principle.
Sure, Jeff, please, no, go ahead.
I just think the bottom line is we're not going to be able just to put a guide's license for trout. It's going to be stripers. It's going to be bass. Striper fishermen, from what I understand, do want it. The bass fishermen don't. And of course, I know Reelfoot doesn't want it. We can imagine why. But I'm just saying, you know, at some point, I think that we're going to have to make that leap. And I think that that's the reason we had the meetings. And I think that it's going to take some discussion. And I don't think it's something that you just decide like that. But I do feel like that you know, when we encompass what are we going to do with the rafters and outfitters there? Well, we'll get into the Watauga in a minute, but I'm just saying, I think geographically, because of where we live, and we have North Carolina and Virginia right in that area, and when you go to the parking lot and you can't find a place to park because it's all out-of-state cars, that's what frustrates Tennessee fishermen, and that's where that if when somebody calls me and says, you know, this is the situation, you know, then I can at least say, well, these guys are now paying a fee, blah, blah, blah. And I just think whether we're going to get enough to financially make it feasible, I'm not sure, but I do know that it's a step that most states have taken. I'm just not real sure why we keep backing off, other than the fact that it's not, you know, financially.
The time I've been on the commission, this has been a subject. And I think the consensus of the commission is that we're going to find a way to address the pay to play. I'm not sure what that is, and we need fisheries help with that, but we're going to find it, and I think we're going to find it real soon. I think the people are expecting us to act on this. Today, we're getting a report of these meetings, and to be addressing it formally today wouldn't be fair to anybody. But I don't even think I know. What Chairman McMillan is saying is at the first of the year, we need to be addressing it. And there may need to be some preliminary sit-down sessions for some of the folks on Fisheries Committee to understand some of the options, maybe just brainstorm. But I would like personally to see this thing being addressed the first of the year. I think it's time.
I've got an additional comment, you got a second. I think, to be the devil's advocate or just the devil, I think discussions need to be made, and not that I'm opposed to it, but those guides that are coming from out of state are bringing non-resident licensed buyers with them. And if you tax those people or put a fee on them and they don't bring those people, then you're gonna negatively affect your income. So
I agree, and that's why we had a meeting, and those people were saying, we want it.
I understand, but it's not like those out-of-state cars have not paid.
Well, they're just
They are
passing,
paid,
they're
but
passing
they
they're
just
through.
past, the guy's just gonna pass it on to the fishermen.
But each one of the fishermen are not buying a license?
Well, obviously, we don't know that, and but
I
I
mean,
do,
so
I think
they're
if you.
supposed to buy a license. is what
Exactly,
I'm
but if
saying.
you have
So-
a guide's license
so-
and they don't buy the license and you check them, they're responsible for
Well,
that.
sure they are,
lose
but
their
I'm just
opportunity
saying
to fish.
that the fishermen that are fishing have bought a license, and the difference is that there's a man in the boat pointing them and telling them where to throw the lure. So it's kind of like a fishing tournament versus a guy in a boat out here. All those guys in the fishing tournament have bought a license. They just got together as a group and put $20 in a fruit jar and went out there and fished. So I think you need to have a long discussion about the cause and effect and the pluses and minuses of a guy's license. Not that I'm opposed to it. I think we ought to have a guy's license possibly for deer and other things too. But when you do that, there's also an approval process when a guy applies for it and he's got violations and he's not done what he's supposed to do we give him a license anyway? Or how are we gonna judge who gets it and who doesn't? So I think there's more discussion needs to be had
Well,
than just establishing it. So I'm
absolutely.
I'm not saying I'm against it, but it's a deeper subject than just.
Well, I understand, we've
doing
been
it.
talking about it for about 3 or 4
We talked about it a long time ago,
Yeah,
but those are some of the issues that will come up.
You
Well,
just
there
can't
was-
set the fees where it's cost prohibitive to
Right.
keep people, but you also give people we talked about, do we want insurance? Do we want to have them CPR? Do they have a cell phone? I mean, I'm just saying that's where you can't get it. You got to get into it,
So
so.
when you get to that kind of enforcement and an approval process or taking their license away from them, then that costs the agency money to have that vehicle established, and you have to set it enough to pay for that.
Jeff, let me make a suggestion, and that is, I think everybody agrees the discussion needs to take place. And all I'm trying to do is say, let's make it take place the first of the year. Why don't you get with Bobby and the staff and you all pick that time?
Well-
And we'll just facilitate this thing actually happening, if that's okay.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think related to this conversation, whether it's the Center for Business and Economic Research, I think a conversation is wonderful. It sounds like this is an important conversation, but I think data would be very helpful. And whether it's Center for Business and Economic Research or the agency or whomever, but I actually think putting together a report on what the potential financial impact will be, this is a question, there's data that we can gather.
Our
So
data goes
before a
back to 2006.
conversation happens, or during the conversation, I don't think that would be an extensive report. We do that if we're going to impact sales tax on cigarette sales. We can find the information, do a comparative study. It shouldn't take an extensive amount of time. I think that certainly would help, given particularly that this is an issue of passion. So data always helps get to a clearer answer, and I think it could probably help us know exactly what that right number might be if ultimately a fee is set. But other states have tackled this. It shouldn't actually be a very extensive timeline, but I do think it probably would be very helpful beyond the conversations.
Thank you for your comments. I think we'll just need to move on. We obviously are going to discuss this. We had meetings at Caney, and these 2 meetings, and we're just trying to gather the information, figure out what we just want to do. And I know the rafting situation probably stimulated. It's also why I didn't push the guide license for a vote last year was because I felt like we had other issues on the river other than just guiding a fish. So I think we just need to, let's move on and we'll discuss the
Move on.
Watauga and then move on, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Guess what? Watauga River, the upper river is crowded with rafters, so we are a good segue there. The rafter, the fishermen were, and rafting community on the Watauga River is much, it's growing or already crowded, however you want to look at it. And fishermen were kind of not happy about the rafters. And they'd like to charge the rafters as outfitters as well. So that gets into this. If we do a guide license, is it just fishing guides? Is it all river users? So there's a broader question here, which is why we don't have a recommendation on that. That's another reason why. But we did have some rafting company owners in the crowd at this meeting the second night. And when they heard that their staff weren't playing nice on the river with the other fishermen, they were really appalled, and they wanted to hear. They opened a line of communication at this meeting to have their people call them, and they want to be good neighbors on the river. So that was the Watauga meeting was a little better than the South Holston in the sense that we got a little bit of communication there between the two groups, and both of the outfitting groups recognized that they could be charged, and if I recall right, they all said they'd pay a little more. So that's a possibility there for sure. Why is this going the other way? That is weird. Use this button now. Okay. Another interesting comment I heard, the whole line of guides nodded their head yes, was that the rafting, it's not really a fishing issue. The guides actually claim that the fishing is just as good or better when the rafts come through, because it stirs off all the benthic bugs and stuff, and the fish start biting. So first I'd heard that. I thought that was interesting. There's a real interest in neatness in Watauga, apparently, or Elizabethton area. They really want TWA areas to be clean and mowed, really at a much higher level than I would expect. But we are addressing that. At that meeting, they had a few of the regional staff had met with this guy in the town, and they're working on some cooperative things to get these places as neat as they require. But litter is a problem on the Watauga. I got thinking about it. It's one of the few trout tailwaters we have that goes through a lot of, residential communities and business communities. So there's probably a lot of surface runoff of trash and debris that's going in. There's two large tribs that feed into that as well. So and they did have a lot of their stakeholders there that were willing to do cleanups and stuff. So that was a problem, but they're aware of it, and I think that's a self-solving problem if they're going to solve it. There's a recently renovated TDOT bridge at Highway 400. They'd like that to be improved, that access area to be improved. And again, they're interested in trying new fishing regulations there. These again are the trout guys. They always want to be tinkering like we do with our regulations to get fishing better. And I think they're open to that as time comes. They also asked for horsepower, one guy did, for horsepower restriction on Wilbur Lake, which is the small lake below Watauga Reservoir, between Watauga Reservoir or Dam and Wilbur Dam. It's a short run, really small area. This guy thinks there shouldn't be any big boats in there. One of the suggestions that was made to the TVA river operating team was that to see if TVA could, if they're going to mess up fishing on the Watauga, could they at least make sure it's good on the South Holston for the same day, and maybe do some kind of alternate thing with their as they're balancing water. And as complicated as that sounded to me, I think once they hit all their other targets for water needs, if they can do it, I think they sounded open to it. So that may help provide more opportunity on the river. They also wanted to know if we could take trees out of the river that might be creating hazards. Generally, us fish guys like to have trees in the river for habitat, but some of them could get out of control if they're blocking up roads and bridges and stuff, but that would be highway or city. We don't do that. So anyway, they mentioned that. So again, the obvious next steps for Watauga to us, maybe the easy things to do, and this first one was to work with TVA to improve the Wilbur tailwater access. This is the first access area on the big rafting area below Wilbur Dam. And TVA land manager there, Jerry Faust, he said that they'd be open to actually expanding that and maybe making a commercial area or ramp, to have a loading zone to ease this congestion issue. So that was pretty exciting to hear that, and I hope that those talks will continue successfully. We are working with TDOT to improve that access area at the Highway 400 bridge. It's been on our list of challenges for some time now. We're working with TDOT through that park and float program to try to at least keep access there. And once there's access established, if we want to do more with it, like a ramp, we can get there after that first step is successful. And again, we're going to continue monitoring our trout populations there. And we're really evaluating on the Watauga River. There's a quality zone that is that we're real interested in knowing if it's really working as well as it should, or would a more river-wide management be appropriate there. Those are the kinds of questions we're asking ourselves. And we had some guys talking after the meeting about that we're interested in that as well. And lastly, TWA will work the Watauga River into its angler use surveys and their economic value surveys in the next year, apparently. So that's part of that shifting creel clerks from reservoirs to tailwaters. So that was the end of the Watauga meeting. If there's any follow-up on that, again, with big picture at the Watauga, the big change was that there was actually user group conflicts there that were present, and there was more talk about everybody paying, even non-motorized vessels. Is just like if you had a canoe and went out, would you be willing to pay that? So we would pitch that.
First of all, I want to thank the agency for, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I got Caney for it whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay. Well, go ahead.
Okay. Quick update on that.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to thank
That's
you
okay.
at this point.
I was asked to give a quick.
Well, let me just quickly
Yeah, sure.
mention Watauga, and the gist I got from the meeting was most of the problem at Watauga is just the access of our fishermen trying to put their boats in on a ramp that's pretty poorly constructed. If you've been there, it's a real steep hill. There's not much parking, so when you kind of get your boat down there, there's a lot of room for congestion, and the complaint is the rafting companies, of which there are 6 that use the ramp, and only 1 is from the state of Tennessee. Throw that out there, but when they come in there, they dump all the rafts out. So if you're a fisherman, everybody's going to start. If you're a float fisherman, everybody's going to start at the same time, and because that's when they're releasing the water. So the problem is, and Jerry, is it Faust?
I think so.
I think that's right, with TVA, was very receptive, because he showed me on a plat how much land they had, and they could actually maybe move, create 2 ramps and have a commercial ramp for just the outfitter. So there again, that's another reason to charge them to have maybe some extra income that we could help TVA develop this. And if we did that, and guys could come down there from Tennessee fishermen, go in and put their boats in, I don't think there's really that much conflict. Once they get on the river, you're going to have people, when you mix beer and a raft, they're going to have people throw stuff at you and off your fishermen. But I'm just saying, I think those issues are just one-on-one. But as far as the access, I think that's where that Watauga can be easily solved. And I think that we need to pursue what Mr. Rouse's enthusiasm was after the meeting. And I'm not sure if I'm the one that needs to do that or if y'all, but he was very willing to jump in there and start looking at the possibility of developing that. So,
Frank, I have one more comment too, sure. Referring to the surveys. I think they dated back to 2006. Is that correct? Or
the economic survey went back to 2002, I believe. It was 10 years old. There's also a creel survey. The last one might have been, I think it might have been 03 or 06. I'm not sure.
And you commented as far as a partnership with Tennessee Tech that did those. Is that correct?
Yeah, we had research dollars to pay Tennessee Tech to do those surveys at that time. We don't have those dollars. We don't have that funding now. So we're trying to do some of this work on our own and following similar methods, and it's going to be a challenge.
Well, has there been any outreach to other universities in that area to do that, that would possibly do a partnership with us on that? I mean, I just think those numbers are very vital, and I understand it
Well,
takes
yeah.
money, but
It's the money and well, the first hurdle we have is the research dollars. Those are expensive surveys, and usually when you approach a university, you're providing them at least 3/4 of the dollars to do the job. And you're talking about $50,000, to get
just-
things
I-
done. But there are other universities that might do these kinds of things. We happen to have a 20-year track record with Tennessee Tech getting the same.
and maybe I missed the point. I just thought that maybe this could be an internship for a college student during the summer that did part of
Oh,
these.
it's way more
much more
involved than
invested in that.
Oh, yeah. If somebody messes it up, you lose a lot. It's a full-time job making sure the creel clerk is doing their job and designing the survey, and the economic evaluation side of it is something that Tennessee Tech did and hired mathematicians on subcontract to get the math right. I mean, I'm a little leery of how we're going to do it. I haven't seen how we're going to do the math yet, but it's very challenging to get accurate willingness to pay estimates. It's easy to ask people how much they spent on the river today, but it's challenging to figure out how much the net value is for those rivers.
Well, we can
We'll
discuss.
look
I won't
into that, yeah.
get any more. That's fine.
pretty-
I know that you got.
We had a Caney Fork meeting here about 2 months ago now, and I was asked to just give us an update on what we're doing with the next steps that were identified at that meeting. And we're in between on most of them. I'll run through the 4 real quickly. We wanted to have this meeting at the Happy Hollow ramp to partition the area and talk about, the best way to have traffic come through there, not have people get in the way. We hit a few scheduling hurdles on this, and then we had the biggest hurdle I had was one of the very first outfitters that stood up and said, "I'll do whatever," said, "I won't come to a meeting if the other outfitter's there." So we're like, well, I guess that's not whatever. So we had a regroup, and we're going to bring them out one at a time now to try to explain what we would like to have happen. And we also did a little more work on the boundaries there, and my sense is that law enforcement feels a little better about what we own and don't own there. So that was more information we needed and got since then. That we are producing the mesh bags to help control litter, and that's an opportunity to give some river etiquette messaging on those bags. If we have success with that, that's something we could easily transport to Watauga River, where they have similar issues. But Betsy Woods in the boating division and Mark Thurman in Region 3 have been working on getting the right message and the right medium. You don't want to give people a pamphlet as they get on the river. They're just going to throw it out. So we want to give them something they can use, or maybe stick to a canoe or something. So they're working on this. And again, the signs for paddler safety. So there's that education component that's going on. And I've been trying to get up. All right. We also are going to repeat the angler survey, that angler use and economic survey, and also a paddler use survey on this river in 2013. So that's still in the planning stages as well. The number one issue or step here about meeting at Happy Hollow is imminent. We just got to get the scheduling right, and I think that's going to be our easiest and most productive solution, just to get that right. We want to get that sorted out where we can just do it through education and not have to do regulations there, basically. And that's all I have.
Well, I do want to thank the agency for the manpower and the effort y'all put in. It's long ways to East Tennessee, and y'all came up there, and I thought y'all did a great job.
They did. Region 4 was a great host. They had all.
Well, and I appreciate it. I really do. And, there was some of the comments were made that those guides were saying that they actually had people from out west that were coming to East Tennessee to fish, and it shows you how good the trout stream is, and the agency needs to be congratulated on developing a fishery like that. And I think, just like I felt like last fall, I think we need to go slow and get it right. But I do think that we need to develop how we're going to handle these rivers and who's going to have to pay what, and how we're going to enforce it, and what benefit the agency will get out of it. But the bottom line is, we've got 3 pristine, well, we have the clinch also that we haven't even talked about in the Knoxville area. But I'm just saying, I appreciate what you did. I know that I'm probably the one that's probably asked for it, and y'all, and I don't want to ask for a lot in my tenure on this commission, but you did, and I appreciate it. And I thought you did an excellent job. And I think we just need to, I'm not asking for us to make a decision in January, but I am asking that we continue the discussion. And I know we're going to have to get boating involved in it. And I just think at some point that we're going to have to pull the trigger. And I think it'll be beneficial to everyone. Is there any more comments on the rivers? And we'll slide on. Questions? But I agree with Harold. We just, come January and we just need to kind of keep discussing it and see what other information we can get. And let's try to make a good decision based on sound research. And I think that what we did was a good start. At least we know what the public's discussing. So I do appreciate what y'all did.
Thank you, too. All right.
All right, we're going to go on with Dave McKinney, Chief Environmental Service. We'll discuss the River Aquatic Center at Gallatin.
Mr. Chairman, the committee chairman, commissioners, I appreciate your time today. There's something, this is an informational item. It's an issue that you're probably going to hear some about in the coming months, and we did not want you to be uninformed. The facility we're talking about is the Cumberland River Aquatic Center. I've not been associated with a project whose acronym was so easy to remember as this one. It's located at the Gallatin Steam Plant on the Cumberland River, just north and east of Nashville, and sits on the thermal discharge from the plant that goes out to the Cumberland River. I'm going to go through these slides fairly quickly, just so you can get an idea of what we have been into out there. The facility you see in the upper left was originally built by TVA to see if they could raise fish in the heated discharge from the steam plant. They did so successfully up into the 70s, and then abandoned the project. Catfish farming took off across the southeast, and they lost interest in it. We got interested in this facility to see if we could convert it to a freshwater mussel propagation facility, and also get into other non-game aquatic species. The following slides just kind of show the restoration work that went on up there. And I will say that most of the work you see done here was either done by the agency. It was our opportunity to learn that we have people in this agency who can pour concrete, plumb, wire, run electricity, you name it. We can do it, and do it very effectively. The other part of this was done by TVA. They provided a new roof for the raceway, did a lot of electrical work for us, and just kind of adopted the project. We refurbished all the raceways, put in new plumbing and aeration systems. You can see the advanced state of decline that it was in before we went in and did all this work. This project's been going on now for about 6 years, and one of the things we did was frame in the open end of the hatchery and put in some classrooms, laboratory facilities, put up some steel barns to use as shops and work areas. And we have used this facility for a variety of purposes. One is the redistribution of mussels out of the Cordell Hull tailwaters. Elsewhere in the Cumberland system, the water's so cold there they don't reproduce, but the mussels still get gravid, so we're putting them elsewhere in the system where they have an opportunity to reproduce. We've used this facility to hold mussels from other river systems like the duck where species are being reintroduced to places where the habitat is now suitable, like the Nolichucky and the Clinch. We hope eventually to the Powell, the Pigeon River. We also use this facility to hold animals from the lower part of the system where zebra mussels are an issue. We use it as a quarantine facility and prior to redistribution. One of the things we've had great success here is other people who propagate mussels use the fish host to, it's a complex life cycle, but you infest the fish, the small Glaucidia are parasitic on the fish for a time, then they drop off, and you harvest them, and then you grow them to a size where they can be reintroduced into the system. We're at the heart of a 5-state project to do this, and lots of people send us their juveniles. They can propagate them, but they have trouble keeping them alive and growing them out. We have great success with that here because we're using that big pump at Gallatin to provide water. And so we have mussels coming from Alabama, Virginia, Kentucky, and have had great success in growing out federally listed species and then reintroducing them into a 5-state area. The science of doing this is something we'll visit with you at length sometime, but this is our propagation facility. We infest fish and then harvest them out of these tanks. And normally the success rate, if you get 1% survival, you're doing pretty well. We've been getting up to 20% survival, so we think that has to do with just as much with the water source as anything. All of the funding, most of the funding for all of this work has come from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Some funding has been from the agency's non-game programs, biodiversity programs, and most of the work we've either done ourselves or TVA has assisted with it. We have partnership projects with Tennessee Tech, both on mussels, and this is one of my favorite because they're getting to the issue of how stream flow affects reproductive success in mussels, and that is part of the in-stream flow science discussion that we are heavily involved in. We've been tagging mussels and reintroducing them to other systems, in particular recent project with the University of Tennessee, where they provide the manpower, if you will, and we provide the mussels, and they tag and monitor these. And these are the first mussel reintroductions into the pigeon in almost 100 years, so it's pretty exciting to see this project going well. In addition to mussels, we work with Tech and other folks on alligator gar, your very favorite animal, I understand, and also on sturgeon, and we've also been raising there. We've got about half a dozen listed snails in Tennessee, and snail propagation was just something we're just in the process of getting started on. A big part of what we've done up here is has to do with the reintroduction of the river sturgeon nationwide. These animals, many have radio tags in them, and we've tracked them all over Tennessee. Some of them have been tracked out of the state, and Bobby Wilson's Fisheries folks have just run a fabulous program up here. And then, of course, the biggest kick we get out of this is all the kids when they come out and help us release sturgeon and put mussels back out and whatnot. But I tell you all of this to tell you that we're this partnership is ending. We've been into it about 6 years. Our agreement with TVA was that either party could terminate this agreement with notice, and back in the summer, we were essentially given notice. The reason is that Gallatin is part of a TVA settlement agreement with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency having to do with emissions controls. And they have elected, instead of retiring Gallatin, to retrofit it with modern emissions controls. And because of the ash spill at Kingston some years ago, they're going to a dry stacking operation where they will no longer use effluent ponds. All of the flue gases will be precipitated and stacked, and they hope marketable for reuse. And so we are in the process of closing this project out and relocating the component parts of it up to the Old Hickory Wildlife Management Area, which is about 6-8 river miles upriver from Gallatin. The water quality should be good up there. We will have some limitations. Part of what made this project so successful was unlimited electricity and unlimited water. We have neither of those things at the WMA. There is three-phase electrical power is not available right now, and then, of course, we don't have that big monkey pump that runs the cooling system at Gallatin to draw water from. But having said that, we are going to stay in a scaled-down version of the propagation business. We've just had too much success here to abandon this because of a setback and TVA's making decisions that they have to really look at their whole coal fleet valley-wide, and this was a business decision. The folks at Gallatin, I can't be more complimentary of how they've partnered with us over the last 6 years. They've been just fabulous hosts. Now, what I also want you to know is that there are other issues related to Gallatin where other groups, other conservation groups are weighing in, and it has to do with the use of coal in general. It has to do with some much larger national agendas than our project here. But this project will get caught up in that conversation. But I just want you to understand that our partnership with TVA has ended. We've been given notice. We are in good faith doing our best to comply with being out of this facility by the end of March 2013. And if questions arise that come to you about the agency's posture and plans here, please feel free to let me know, and I'll try to help you answer those questions. I have just broken my long-term rule of not showing you a bunch of slides. And so my apology, but I really appreciate your patience here. And,
So we're moving our crack house, right?
it will no longer be the crack house. We're going to have to find a new acronym if you have some suggestions. Thank you very much.
Hang on just a minute.
What are they doing with the facility?
This, everything that is not concrete, that can't be unbolted and moved, everything that can be moved, we are going to salvage. We're going to take that up to the WMA and in a phased process, put a lot of it back to work. What will remain will be those concrete raceways, immovable, and TVA will demolish that, and the footprint of their new emissions control facility will sit down over where we are now. They did consider letting us stay there, but there's some real issues. The dry stacking operation has an ammonia exclusion area that you just don't want the public near, and the noise from it apparently is substantial. So we are pleased to retire to the peace and quiet of the Old Hickory WMA.
Do we have any other questions for Mr. McKinney? Certainly appreciate it. It's obviously a very valuable and worthwhile venture you have, and congratulations on the success you have with your.
We hope to report to you that we're going to continue that elsewhere.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, let me, Ms. Hayes, if you'd let the record acknowledge that Commissioner Woodson is here, and we're going to take a break at this time till 5 after 11, and then we'll come back, start with wildlife.
This for you, John.